Welcome to Daily Game, and today we're going to talk about a new Nintendo accessory that left fans scratching their heads. Could this be the end of the Halo TV series? And finally, a look at the sequel to Splitgate. But first, let's start with Power Wash Simulator. A brand new free update was released called the Muckingham Files 3, so be sure to check that out if you're a fan of the game. Ubisoft has delayed Rainbow Six Mobile and The Division Resurgence beyond March 2025. The games were announced back in 2022, but it looks like you have to wait a bit longer to get your hands on them. Mortal Kombat developer NetherRealm has unfortunately laid off its mobile team. At least 50 members of staff have been impacted, so hopefully they land on their feet soon. This comes to us from Sophie McAvoy via gi.biz. A new report has found that 82% of American gamers made an in-game purchase in freemium titles last year. The report also found that 62% of adults over the age of 18 engaged in gaming, with millennials comprising 49% of the segment, followed by Gen Z at 13%. Those surveyed, 77% play on more than one platform, with over a third regularly using a combination of console, PC, and mobile. I'm very surprised to find the number that 82% of Americans have made an in-game purchase. I'm just curious how much further those numbers break down. I kind of can't imagine the majority of the numbers still coming from consoles or PCs. Probably a lot of mobile gaming. Same thing is when you talk about 77% play on more than one platform. I'm curious how much of that is actually just console and PC, or a combination of consoles without mobile being in the picture. I think mobile is doing a lot of heavy lifting in those two segments. And it's always interesting to see how much of the pivoted 18 to 32 or 18 to 24 demographic still exists in terms of playing video games, especially that growing with Gen Z coming at 13. It's only going to grow over time. I'm still genuinely baffled and surprised that we still haven't seen advertising take over video games. We, recently talked about Game Pass increasing in price. I'm sort of surprised that there isn't a Game Pass ad-supported model. It seems like advertisers would run and over each other in order to advertise on video games. Bad news for Halo fans. Paramount Plus has canceled this series after just 2 seasons, but there might be a silver lining to the story. A source tells THR that Amblin, Xbox, and 343 Industries will still attempt to shop this series around. Honestly, I don't think it'll be worth it for anyone to pick it up unless they're super committed to continuing it. I wouldn't pick this up for a season just to help them finish the story. I could see this finding a bit of success actually on Netflix or even Hulu. Those are probably the only two that I can think of. But honestly, I think that Xbox should just let it go and reboot it and don't take Master Chief's helmet off. I just feel like the direction of the show, I only lasted about 5 episodes. I couldn't do it. Just lost interest very quickly. Nintendo announced a Joy-Con charging dock over 7 years after the launch of Nintendo Switch. Fans are a bit confused by the timing, but it's pretty obvious to me what this is about. We all know the new Nintendo Switch is right around the corner, and it's likely that the rail system that holds the new version of Joy-Con will change, meaning that old Joy-Con will need a new way to be charged. This just looks like a way for Nintendo to get ahead of that concern from fans who want to keep using the legacy Joy-Con with the new Nintendo Switch, even if those old Joy-Con will no longer fit onto the actual system itself, whatever this new Nintendo Switch is going to be. The FTC has filed a new letter in its ongoing appeal of Microsoft's Activision acquisition, addressing Xbox's recent changes and price increase to Game Pass. They reg in part, quote, Microsoft is discontinuing its $10.99 a month console Game Pass product. Users of that product must pay 81% more. Microsoft is introducing a degraded product, Game Pass Standard, at $14.99 a month. This product costs 36% more than console Game Pass and withholds day one releases. Product degradation, removing the most valuable games from Microsoft's new service, combined with price increases for existing users, is exactly the sort of consumer harm from the merger, the FTC has alleged. And I do think that there was at one point, this was either through a leaked email or something that Phil actually said during the FTC trials. I don't 100% remember, but there was some mention about not increasing the price of Game Pass, which I think was a mistake, but it's worded very specifically. And I think that's enough of a defense where they said that this acquisition of Activision would not affect a price increase. And I think there's wiggle room for them to still kind of get away with saying it that way, because I'm sure that if they open their books, they'll probably show that Game Pass is really not as successful as they wanted it to be. And I think the price would have gone up no matter what. And I think that day one games, this whole day one removal off of Game Pass Standard and only putting it behind Ultimate, I think that's a decision that's more driven by the fact that Microsoft has been pumping so much money into their first party titles. I mean, we see them going to other consoles. It looks like, I wouldn't say that their budgets are bleeding, but that they want to make sure they recoup costs appropriately, and putting games on day one is basically bleeding your games at launch. So I feel like all of this would have happened with or without the Activision acquisition, but I do think it's still a fair point that the FTC is bringing up. And just side note, I still laugh at those leaked emails where Xbox said internally that they were hoping for 100 million Game Pass subscribers by 2030. I remember thinking how ridiculous that was, and yeah, I just don't see them going anywhere close to that number. Overwatch's newest support hero was announced, and her name is Juno. She's armed with a Meta Blaster, which doubles for healing and damage, Pulsar torpedoes, which lock onto enemies and allies to heal and damage respectively. She has a boost ability to glide horizontally, and Hyper Ring, which increases movement speed of allies that pass through it. Her ultimate is called Orbital Ray, aka the Hammer of Dawn, as I like to call it, which heals allies and increases their damage. She'll be available to all players at the beginning of Season 12 on August 20th, but fans can take her for a test drive this weekend, July 19th through the 21st. Coincidentally, the open beta for Concord, which I just downloaded. I'm going to get into it. I'm very excited to try her out. I am a support main in Overwatch, so I'm definitely looking forward to this. She looks really fun. She looks pretty cool. And this might be the last support for a little while, because I'm pretty sure the next one should be DPS. We haven't had a DPS in a bit, but yeah, she looks like a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to trying it out over the weekend. And finally, Splitgate 2 was announced via CG trailer, coming to PC, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X in 2025. Now, people instantly thought it was a hero shooter, which is understandable, honestly, because look at this trailer, but it's actually faction based. This is straight from their Steam page. Quote, dash around the battlefield as the agile Eros, control the chaos as a tactical and time manipulating Meridian, or run in guns blazing with Sabrascus raw power. Utilize dynamic abilities and diverse weapons to your advantage and playstyle. Mix and match factions to build the ultimate team. Now, 1047 Games head Ian Prowse told IGN, quote, Splitgate was much more of an arena shooter, fast-paced, very circular motion. But this next game is much more of a class-based shooter or arcade shooter, where it's still fast-paced, still about shooting people and portaling, but it's a little bit more thoughtful. It's a little bit more strategic. The angles are a little bit more intentional and less chaotic. I remember playing the first Splitgate right off the bat. You do instantly get that feeling of Halo with portals. You could definitely tell that it was built grassroots style from the ground up with a very small team. And I remember when they first announced that they received a $100 million investment, that I said, this is probably a huge mistake from this team, because even though they were definitely consistently over capacity, they just couldn't handle the amount of people that were coming into the game. Having that large of an investment for a small team puts an immense amount of pressure to pay that bill back, in a sense. And so they went with the Overwatch play. They kind of stopped developing Splitgate in order to develop this sequel, which I don't think is necessary. I don't think that many people know about the first Splitgate, where I feel like you could have just straight up kind of relaunched the game in a sense. I don't think making it a part 2 adds absolutely anything. And when you look at this trailer, I don't know if this was just an issue where marketing built this in a bubble. It kind of reminds me of when we saw that Dragon Age Veilguard trailer, where people were like, this trailer doesn't really feel like it's really selling me the product that's being built. That's how I feel about Splitgate 2, where you kind of do get that feeling that it was built in a marketing bubble. You kind of have the wisecracking Ryan Reynolds cliche character that we see so much in these shooters nowadays. You have the really serious female with the dark lipstick and the big brooding evil guy, or not evil guy, but the big brooding strong man. A lot of them just looked like caricatures, nothing really unique here. So I instantly was with a lot of people. I thought it was a hero shooter. Maybe there are personalities inside of each of these factions that you can pick. But the one thing that I enjoyed about Splitgate was that it was symmetrical. Everyone had access sort of to the same tool, which was the portal, and everything else was just raw skill, positioning, game sense of the map, and your raw aim. And I think that's what a lot of people loved about this arena shooter. I don't like when you start. I think that you're starting to blend in with everything else when you start introducing shields and slow down abilities and things like that. And choosing different factions for different advantages or disadvantages. I think now you're mixing yourself up with almost everything else that we're seeing in the market. And so far from what I've seen, I do like the art style and sort of the approach, sort of this commercialized, a little bit like the finals sort of feel when it comes to the capitalistic take on a shooting sport. So I kind of like that direction that they're going with, but I'm a little bit worried about, are they just going to get lost in the race? But I also feel like we have to hear a bit more before kind of jumping the gun. Now, there's also a companion app available for iOS and Android that has the first episode of a digital comic series if you're interested in learning more about the game. Review embargoes lifted on 2 games dropping this week. Kunitsu Gami Path of the Goddess sits at a 79 Metacritic based on 31 PS5 reviews. Inverse says, quote, it's reminiscent of one of those weird experimental PS2 titles like Okami that would go on to become beloved cult classics. And Dungeons of Hinterberg receives an 83 Metacritic off 30 PC reviews. PC Gamer says Dungeons of Hinterberg is a beautiful puzzler and a satisfying riff on the Austrian tourist economy. Just a reminder, if you have a select eligible Game Pass account, both of these games will be available day one if you want to check those out. And before we go, Suicide Squad Cade fans, a new look at Mrs. Freeze ahead of her debut on July 25th. There are so many obviously bad things that you can say about this video game, but you can definitely never insult that Rocksteady team. I mean, look how talented they are. This looks absolutely amazing. That art and animation team are top-notch, undefeated. And it just kind of feels like it's like they took the NBA Dream Team and said, let's send you guys to the Euro World Cup or something. It just feels like such a waste of talent when you see what they were asked to build with the failure that was Suicide Squad Killed the Justice League. And a quick shout out to Ironwood Studios, the team behind Pacific Drive, announced that the game has sold 600,000 copies globally. That's it for today. Like it if you like this, subscribe if you loved it, and listen to the Camp Koji podcast every Monday. Peace.